Hey, District 4. This video is to teach you how to roleplay in DECA. My name is Kevin Smith. I am the Texas DECA District 4 Vice President of Outreach.
Hi, my name is Priscilla Maripatla, and I am an ICDC competitor.
All right, so essentially, the point of this presentation is to teach you guys how to design and deliver an amazing presentation for your judge. All right, so in terms of pre-preparation tips, first things first, know what's going on throughout the world. So for example, with my event, I typically go into finance. So if there's any financial events within my current, the country I live in, a country across the world, it's good to stay up or like keep track of topics like that. That way you can kind of know what's going on in the world. And if your judge also keeps up themselves updated with world events, they'll take notice of that. They know that you're trying, that you're aware of what's going on in the world. And I think that really just kind of gives you like more leverage with your judge. Um, if you're trying to practice in advance, best thing to do is just look up role plays online. There are plenty out there. There's yeah, like I said, there's just a lot of them out there. You could ask a friend or a parent to judge as long as they can read the script, you're good to go. And if you know somebody that works in the industry that you are competing in, don't be afraid to ask them any questions. They could easily provide you with so much information. Christina, do you want to cover that last one?
Yeah. Also for district, you should be aware that they release the instructional area or the two areas that it might be between in advance. So especially for district, you can get a head start a few months early and just go over those performance indicators, which we'll talk more deeply about later, and get to know those more deeply so that you're more prepared for your first role play of the season. So one of the key aspects of delivering a memorable presentation for roleplay is to be creative. When you're making your visual aids during your prep time, it's important to, well, one, it is important to make visual aids because this is a big aspect towards making your presentation stand out from everyone else who's also doing the same situation. And as and the more memorable your presentation is, the higher chances you're going to score better. And overall, you're more likely to advance to the next level of competition. Uh, in addition, another key way to consistently increase your score is by testing. It's really important to study for your test about your career cluster. And there are several ways to do this. First, you can use the DECA practice testing website, and you can go over the answers you got wrong or struggled on. A lot of practices online also have answer explanations, which if you kind of read over those once or twice for the ones you missed and the ones you got correct, you can understand the key points that are tested over and over again in your test. And also, there are also a lot of Quizlets available online, and this is a great way to learn terminology, both just in general and that are your industry, specific to your industry.
All right, so during the test, I know for a lot of y'all it can be stressful. Tests are typically 100 questions long, so it can be long and sometimes boring. I won't deny that. But once you actually start the test, if you ever find a question that's too confusing or too difficult for you, don't stare at it and try to figure it out. It's better just to skip on. I know lots of teachers have told you to do that for other tests. Same thing applies here. And then in my experience, a lot of the questions have been relatively simple and straightforward. So essentially, don't overthink the questions. Go with your gut feeling. Most of the time, you'll get it right on the first time. And then for some events, there's like actual math on them where you have to calculate like tax, percentages, etc. So you're gonna want to bring like a basic calculator. So nothing like a TI-84 and nothing like that. If you can't do anything like trigonometry or graphing, that's a no-go, and your conference will confiscate that from you during your test, and you'll be left without a calculator, which not a good thing. So for district, state, and ICDC, there is a kind of like relatively different levels in what you want to score on your test. So for district, you should aim to get at least an 80 or higher, state an 85 or higher, and ICDC a 90 and higher. So when you're doing your practice exams on the practice portal, based on what you get on there, you can kind of gauge how you'll perform on the real test. In my opinion, I would just keep on going until I at least hit that like marker for whichever competition I'm about to go to next.
Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about how you should be using your 10-minute prep time if you're in an individual event. So the first step is to read over your scenario prompt and your performance indicators. So performance indicators are essentially the roadmap of your presentation. They're telling you what important concepts you should be discussing during your presentation. And it is important to keep in mind that these are what the judge is scoring you mainly based off of. So even more than addressing the scenario, these performance indicators are like essentially the guideline to how you will be scored. It is so when you're doing your prep time, you should probably write them down word for word. And then also during your presentation, try to say them word for word if possible, just to make sure that the judge knows that you have addressed this performance indicator. So also, but while you are addressing performance indicators, it is important not to just be thinking of them like a checklist, but you have to be relating them back to the scenario as well. So yeah, so whenever you're talking about it, make sure that you make those connections, that you're not just listing out facts, but you're also relating it back to how these can be applied to help solve whatever scenario you're discussing. So the second step is to create resources that can aid your presentation and help be more memorable to the judge. These can be a chart or a brochure, and you should also be using either the PIs or some aspect of the scenario as your template.
I also do want to mention for step number 2, at the end or sometimes later in the video, I will be showing y'all how to make a business card without scissors and just a paper and pencil. And then I'll also be going through like how I design my brochures and how like the other creative things I've done to help y'all out. Priscilla, you can continue.
Okay, so step 3, as Kevin just mentioned, is also to create additional visual aids, which can be business cards, QR codes, etc. Generally, it's important to have like 2 or 3 main visuals that you're kind of falling back on. This can help reduce the amount of stress you feel during prep time, so you're not just trying to like think up a new creative idea like in the 10 minutes you have. It can be really helpful if you have like 2 or 3 go-to visuals that you practice making before, so that you have that experience that you're able to make them quickly. Also, step 4 is just to practice, practice, practice. You want to practice as many role plays as possible. As Kevin mentioned earlier, there are a lot of role plays out there on the internet. You should try to like look through all of them or as many as possible, because these can give you a really good idea of what type of scenarios you're going to see when you actually go to competition.
All right, so for doubles roleplay, unfortunately, neither of us have really done too much in this kind of event. So the information that we're giving you is based on what we know from others who have participated in it. So the standard prep time for doubles roleplay is 30 minutes and 15 minutes for presentation time. When it comes, since there's 2 of y'all have to find a way to coordinate without seeming unprofessional, let's just say that. So having like a hand gesture or a certain phrase should be enough to signal your partner that, hey, I'm finished. You can speak now. Um, Ahead of time, so before even going to your conference, you should have practice transitioning a few times. The better the transition, the more likely your judge will take note of that and see that y'all are able to collaborate and cooperate very well. Try to focus on having equal amounts of speaking time. If your judge notices that one person is speaking far more than the other, they'll notice this, and well, that shows poor communication and collaboration, and obviously that's not good for anybody. And then at the very end, your judge will be asking you questions. Same thing goes for single role play. But in this situation, you're going to want to alternate. So that way, assuming, let's say, 2, 3, 4 questions, y'all will have a fairly even amount. And, you know, participation is key. And then this goes for both presentations, double and single. You should know the basics. So essentially saying things like, hello, how's your day? How are you? Stuff like that. Judges will take note of that. For almost every single judge that I've had, the ones that I've been able to speak to, after the conference per se, have told me that I was like one of the few people who asked them how their day was. And to me, I was astonished by that. But that what that tells me is that many people don't do it. So by doing something as simple as that, you immediately rank yourself so much higher. Other things like shaking their hands and smiling throughout the presentation are things to also keep in mind.
So one important thing that you can do to make your presentation stand out a bit more is to create a story. This can be either real or fake. For example, you can point to your previous experiences in the industry that you obviously probably don't actually have. Just make sure that you make it realistic and believable and kind of seem like more of a professional about how you're applying your past experiences to help you solve whatever scenario that you're currently in. Also, I know this kind of goes against instinct because personally, whenever I'm nervous, I try to like speak faster, but you should try to speak a little bit slower than your normal talking pace. And this will help you make sure that your thoughts are keeping up with what's coming out of your mouth and kind of prevent these freezes where you just like get stuck and don't know what to talk about next. But if you do blank out or freeze, it is better to just take a pause and be silent for a moment so that you can recollect your thoughts rather than using filler phrases such as or like. And it's also important to practice kind of stop using these phrases if you use them in everyday speech so that you're not overusing these filler words. In addition, you should be adapting to your role that you are given in your scenario. So try to behave as if you are in the position that you've been given. So if you are a subordinate to the judge, make sure that you're being respectful for their like higher level of experience and make sure that you're kind of addressing them as you would someone who is a superior position to you at work. If you are the superior position to the judge, then you can be a little bit more assertive and yeah, you can be a little more assertive. In addition, be personable. As Kevin mentioned earlier, you should be treating the judge as a human being and talking to them as you would in a normal conversation. Especially if you are one of the later times in your category, just know that the judges may be tired by the time it's your turn. So make sure that you are kind of attempting to keep their attention. If you see that their attention is like straying, if they're not looking at you, or whatever that makes you feel like they are no longer listening to you, you can ask them like a simple question or something to bring them back and kind of show that kind of interactiveness to help them know that you want to involve them in the scenario as well.
And then some more tips, do not make a script. I did this in my first district conference and I was unable to really kind of effectively talk about all the PIs. It seemed more like rambling. That's what my judge said. So essentially do that. Have like a sort of like a visual aid that helps you talk about your pieces. It's better to kind of have like bullet points rather than, a whole script. And then for PIs, as we both said multiple times, it is absolutely imperative that you mention them all. If you're worried, you can say them like explicitly as they're written on your paper. But as long as you kind of get the gist of it, you should be fine. And if you want to go in a different order, like for some reason, like since you're supposed to be using them as your guide, let's say for some reason, like the last one feels better to go first than the first one, go ahead and do it. As long as you say it, you're totally fine. And then for professionalism, um, pretty simple, shake hands, use formal dialogue. I think there's really a lot of ways that you can impress your judge. Anything that you think an adult would do in like the same situation that you're in, do it. It's probably the right thing to do. And I believe that's it. If y'all have any questions, you can contact Presida or I through our phone numbers there. You could also message us on the District 4 Instagram where Nikita, Maya, or I will respond to you. Yeah, Presida, do you have anything you want to say?
Yeah, that's it. Thank you for listening. I hope this video helped you.